Backpacking can seem like a really expensive hobby to get into, but I don't think it has to be expensive. If you're on a budget, I think a lot of gear can be gotten very, very cheap. And I'm talking about even if you want to do a 2,200 mile hike like the Appalachian Trail or a 2,600 mile hike like the Pacific Crest Trail. There's so many different ways that you can be thrifty with the gear that you use and still be just as safe and just as comfortable as anyone else out there. Before we get into this, I'll say that this is a two-part series. In this video, I'll go over a ton of advice on where and how to find gear for very cheap. And then in the next video, I'll go over all of my specific recommendations on my favorite budget gear. So anyway, let's check this out. My first tip for budget backpacking gear is to know what you need. Here you'll see a list of 29 items. If I was going to an unspecified place with unspecified weather, I would grab these and go happily and safely. This is, in my opinion, the most important thing to pay attention to. And after 17,000 miles of backpacking, this is what I consider a list of essentials. The brands aren't as important, the models aren't as important. This is just a list of gear to give you an idea of what you need. So why is this list so important in regards to saving money? Well, knowing what you need is going to save you money because you're not going to buy a bunch of extras and a bunch of things that are non-essential. In the end, of course, carry what you want. But I think it's really important to just know what is needed, what is essential. So then my second tip is to use what you already own. Use what you have. And maybe you're thinking to yourself like, well, I don't own any backpacking gear. But I want you to look at that list again, and maybe something you'll start to notice is that you already have a lot of this stuff. I actually marked with a little tiny star every item that you could probably find laying around your house. For example, you probably already have a battery bank lying around. I know I already had them long before I ever started backpacking, and I consider it an essential safety item considering how useful phones are these days. A pack liner is just a trash bag you stuff all your gear into to waterproof everything. You definitely own a trash bag. The thicker, the better. A warm jacket, gloves, beanie, and tights. As someone who grew up in Florida, I think I can say that everybody, even my Florida people, owns some warm clothes. In a junk drawer, you probably have a small flashlight that could be used instead of a fancy headlamp. So what I want you to do is to dig through your home and ask yourself, is this backpacking gear? I did this myself when I first started backpacking. The majority of my gear was just stuff that I found lying around the house. And I proceeded to hike and backpack with that gear for like the next 2 to 3 years before I felt like I was ready to invest in more expensive things. So the things that you're gonna find in your closet are really not that much different from the high-tech, expensive stuff that you're gonna find on the market today. Sure, it's gonna be a little bit heavier, it's gonna be a little bit bulkier, but it's going to be fine. It doesn't have to be like super, super fancy. Now, as always, take shorter trips near home with this stuff to just make sure it works as you expect it to before you head out on that 2,000 mile long hike. I think it's good to just get out and experiment and try things and see what is actually going to work for you. My tip number 3 would be to research your planned trip, research the location, and research the weather. I say to do this because with a little bit of research, you may find that the location you plan on hiking, you may need even less than those 29 essential items that I mentioned before. I do this all the time, choosing to start my hikes when weather is most favorable or hiking in environments where I would need less. This helps me to avoid carrying extra gear that would be required during different seasons. It also prevents me from needing to buy that gear. So think about a desert versus a rainforest, or winter hiking versus summer hiking. Those are extreme examples, but I think you get the point. Different trails, different environments, and different seasons can all play into your advantage. So who knows, maybe with a little bit of extra planning, you can get away with even less and save yourself a little bit extra money. Now, my fourth tip is, of course, to buy used. Used gear is fantastic because, of course, there are people like me who are maybe upgrading old gear and getting rid of the old stuff, or people who are outgrowing certain things and getting rid of it, which you, of course, then get to benefit by getting that stuff very cheaply. First, of course, there is Facebook Marketplace. If you're looking for something specific, you can search what's available or follow different groups dedicated to backpacking sales. You can get high-end stuff here for seriously discounted prices, and that's awesome. Second, I would recommend checking out thrift stores. They aren't the best place to search for hiking specific gear, but what they are great for is clothes. Jackets, fleeces, raincoats, beanies, gloves, base layers, tights, hats, shirts, pants, and shorts are all readily available at thrift stores. You could even grab a fanny pack there, which is a great backpacking item as well. All right, just a quick little aside. This fleece sweater, a really nice like Patagonia fleece sweater, weighs 7 ounces or something. I bought it at a thrift store. Some nice Columbia hiking shirts that would normally cost like $40 or more. I buy these at thrift stores for like $10. Pretty nice like rain jacket. I don't know if I would trust it on like the Appalachian Trail, but on a desert hike or something like that, absolutely. Another just fleece jacket. This one's from the North Face. There's definitely lighter or better options out there, but for $10, this is a great option. An Arc'teryx wind jacket. It's not my size, but guess what? It's my partner's size. I found this at a thrift store. Thrift stores, used marketplaces, all sorts of stuff. You can find some really incredible deals and some really incredible things. If you're patient, you look around and you know kind of roughly what you're looking for. You're not going to find maybe the best of the best at these kind of places, but you know, you can find some really wonderful budget options that are more than good enough. Now, my fifth tip is to wait for deals. Most brands, most companies out there throughout the year are going to have a sale at some point or another. So what I would do is I would take a moment to look up your desired company, your desired brand, and see what kind of sales they've run in the past. Because unfortunately, some companies just don't ever do sales, or the sales are not worth the wait. Now, I think sales can be particularly great for two things in particular. Buying a sleeping bag used is not that great. It just loses its loft, it loses its warmth, and buying one used, you may find yourself getting out into a very cold environment and just not being comfortable, not being safe, and that's definitely not what you want. That is something that I would be looking for to buy new. Another thing that I would maybe be wary about buying used is a rain jacket. Rain jackets over very short periods of time sometimes can just no longer be waterproof. So buying a used rain jacket and thinking about the consequences of like hypothermia while backpacking, for now, I would just avoid maybe the thrift store rain jackets. So that's the two items that I would kind of consider getting new. So anyway, sales are great, and I think you should definitely look at them because you can find stuff that you really truly want, super high-end things for 30 to 40% off, and that's pretty great. Now, my tip number 6 is to look at cheaper materials instead of the more expensive ones. These fancy, expensive, high-tech fabrics are really cool and great, but oftentimes the biggest difference between those fancy materials, like Gore-Tex and Dyneema, versus the cheaper materials is the price. In many cases, the cheaper materials even outperform these expensive materials. So when looking at tents, backpacks, sleeping bags, and layers, 3 easy materials to look out for are sil poly and sil nylon instead of Dyneema, or synthetic insulations like Apex instead of down. All right, I just want to add a little bit of context to this in the real world of backpacking gear. Here we have the Enigma quilt by Enlightened Equipment. $250 for the Apex version, or a synthetic insulation. Now if we look at the down version, that's $430 for a quilt with basically the same specs, and for a quilt that's going to do the exact same thing. So if you're looking to save some money, you can get the cheaper insulation and save yourself $200. Now another example of this is Durston Gear, a Canadian-based ultralight backpacking company. They make really fantastic tents, and here is another great example because they make this tent, the X-Mid 1, and I think all of their tents, in both Dyneema and Silpoly. So the Silpoly version of this tent is $240. And again, for the exact same tent, same design, same features, same everything, just different fabric, that's $560. So with the tents, you're saving $300 by just going with the cheaper material. So materials make a massive difference in price, and those are three that I think you should look out for. That's Silpoly, Sil-Nylon, and synthetic insulations instead of down. Now, my seventh tip is to get creative. I think a lot of the fun in backpacking is just getting out there and experimenting. Try that thrifted jacket. Hunt down the deals, search for used items, experiment with different materials, and try carrying less. Hiking on a budget is perfect for this, as you can't go to the highest end brand imaginable and just simply buy everything from them. The journey is what backpacking is all about, and that's not just on the trail. That's also at home, in the planning, in the gear buying, in the testing phase. The journey is everything in backpacking. And some of my fondest memories of backpacking are getting out on my home trail and just trying weird things and seeing what works for me. So whether it's thrift stores or online marketplaces or just digging through your own closet, I hope that you get creative out there, because there's so many different ways that you can save money with gear. You don't need the fanciest of everything, unless, of course, you want the fanciest of everything. Next week, we'll do another video on this same topic, but we're gonna go over all of my favorite budget backpacking gear. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, give me a little thumbs up. If you wanna see more videos like this, then please subscribe to this channel. I've got some great trips planned for this year, and I hope you stick around for it. Anyway, thanks for watching.